The first thing that comes to mind, and I said it to, you know, your mom, your dad, whoever's at home, but I'll say it to you as well. You're not alone. I've been there, which is why this is so important to me. I know what it's like to be in that kind of place where, like I described, and I have this thing that I'm struggling with, or I have this thing that I don't know how to talk about. I don't quite have the words for it. And I feel like if I do talk about it, I'll be judged. I'll be kind of tossed aside or won't be taken seriously, you know? And having been there myself, like, I get you. Like, I really, really feel where you're coming from. Not like this casual, like, yeah, I feel you, bro. Like, I've been in your shoes, you know? And while, you know, our shoes might be different styles nowadays, I've been in your place.
Hello, all our viewers and listeners out there on Unfiltered Conversations. Today, our guest is Chris Rogers, educator, public speaker, recovery coach focused on helping young people and families navigate mental health, digital pressures, and unhealthy online behaviors. With both professional expertise and lived recovery experience, Chris leads with clarity, compassion, and accountability. Chris, welcome to Unfiltered Conversations.
Thank you very much, Michael, for having me. Sincerely, it's awesome to be here.
Oh man, you are amazing. So researching you, it's pretty cool what you're doing for one. Helping out young teens, that is not easy at all. You remind me of what's his name over in England? He did the English lunch. I think his name is Dave something. I forgot his name. Oh, man, it was a Netflix documentary, and just seeing him working with the young people, man, that is amazing because they can be testy sometimes. So yeah, so appreciate you.
Absolutely.
I'd like to ask you a question like what was the moment for you that made you realize that, especially in this, I guess, environment, this digital age, especially with our youth, that it's not just a problem, that this is your mission?
Well, from my experience as a teacher, so full transparency, I used to teach. I know we were talking a little bit beforehand. So I used to teach in Manhattan, in the heart of New York City. I'm a New Yorker through and through.
Yeah.
That's, you know, where I cut my teeth, right?
Yeah.
And I was a music teacher for the better part of a decade, and I taught in middle of the pandemic, you know, when everything was shut down and we were doing school online. Noticed how much of a shift in the not just the attitude and not just the attention span, but the overall personality of my young students when it came to that sense of isolation and separation from their teachers and peers. And by the time we finally got back into the school building, there was, not to be over the top, but it was almost as if I was teaching different people, you know,
Um,
that sense of dependency on the internet. That ultimately led me to the world of compulsive behaviors when it comes to irresponsibility around the internet, specifically around the use of pornography, which is obviously, you know, a taboo, stigmatized type of thing, but it's something that exists. And the more we sort of sweep it under the rug, the more the stigma will persist, right? And I really, really noticed that this is not just a problem, but it has absolutely impacted young people in this day and age. Because we got to keep in mind, and I say this often, when it comes to having conversations with Gen Z, Gen Alpha, you know, like students that are in high school and middle school right now, and even starting their, you know, young adulthood, somebody with the best intentions in the world can say a common phrase like, you know, when I was your age, you know, well-meaning and well-intentioned. But one thing that we got to keep in mind, that phrase in many ways doesn't apply. You
yeah.
know, we're talking about a generation of children that don't know what life is like before social media. We're talking about a generation of children that don't know what life is like before the internet. You
Yeah.
know? So the act of communication, the act of receiving information, the act of being entertained are very different things. So, my mission through my programs that my absolute soul and heart has been put into, the Rebooted Teen program and the Rebooted Teen Parent program, for providing practical but very actionable coping skills and self-awareness exercises to make sure that someone as young as, 13 to 17 can really, really benefit from and support families that perhaps don't know how to initiate otherwise awkward conversations when it comes to things like social media and excess exposure to the internet and particularly, the world of pornography, with sort of
Chris, I
like
think we
this.
lost you for a second.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think we lost your audio. Sorry about that. Can you say something again?
Say something again.
Say one more thing.
One more thing.
Hmm. Weird. It is weird. Hold on.
All is well.
Try it one more time.
One more time. Check, check, 1, 2.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Sorry. So sorry so much about that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Technology be technology.
There you go. And this is why this program exists. Let's talk about it. The internet, man. But anyway, just to cut to the chase, like my heart and my mission is to, provide a sense of solace and just a sense of community and conversation without shame when it comes to young people's relationship with the internet.
It's what's crazy is like this weekend, I'm not sure if you heard the stir up with Verizon. All its networks went down. And so a
Mm,
lot of people it was the Central and East Coast that was mainly affected, but people were
okay.
losing their minds
Mm.
online. And roughly it's our generation, the millennials, right? That was losing our minds. Not saying that, the Gen Alpha and Gen Z wasn't, but it's just I've seen online our dependence on technology, right? And
And
how all of that. Say again.
I was going to say, I mean, like, and the fact that, like, our generation are the parents.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but a lot of, a younger generation's dependency and relationship with the internet comes a lot from that sort of monkey see, monkey do.
Dude.
It's like, oh man, mom, dad, whoever are freaking out that the internet is down. I guess I have a reason to be anxious and be freaking out too. So it's just, but as a Verizon, customer myself, I did experience that shutdown.
Yeah. It was wild, it was wild
Yeah,
because
man.
I had, I was just trying to get a hold of family back stateside and who was on the Verizon network and it was showing down. So I was like, "Okay." And then when I heard it was a national, wide thing, I was like, "Oh, okay." But, when I did get a hold of my family, they was kind of upset with the whole process, and I was like, "Man, it happens." And then we had a good spirited conversation about that, like, what was life before technology? And then they was like, "You know what? Like, man," they're like, "Man," and they started, rehashing things, and they realized that they had such a dependency on it. So it was kinda amazing to watch, and they do have young children as well. So, it was pretty, everything came full circle. So, you say as a coach, for literacy and lived experience. And some people, might misunderstand about what you do, especially when it comes to recovery, until it happens to them. What do you say to those people?
Man, well, a big mission of mine is to, it's interesting that you talk about like a life before technology, or sorry, a life before particularly social media and the internet.
Yeah.
Like, how did we function? And man, I mean, a big thing for me, especially after what I saw during when everything shut down during 2020, choosing community over isolation. And realize how much that impacts really people of any age, but particularly those that are in their formative years, like kind of like discovering the world for the first time. A big thing that I really, really emphasize the whole thing when it comes to any particular world, when it comes to compulsive behaviors, it's not just the thing. It's not just the behavior or the substance, whatever it happens to be. It's the place from which it's coming from. So, for example, you'll never hear me say to a client, and this might sound a little strange, but stay with me. You'll never hear me say to a client the words, "Don't watch porn." You'll never hear. What we intend to focus on is that inner magnet, if you will, that might gravitate us toward a particular behavior, even if we know
Uh,
logically it's proven in ways ABC that it's become unhealthy for us.
yeah.
That's really what the Rebooted Teen and Rebooted Teen program starts to focus on, like,
Yeah.
really, really zone in on, like, what's going on internally to the point where it's affecting me externally,
Totally.
and developing those sense of self-awareness and developing that sense of, "What do I actually value? Like, what do I actually want? And are these types of decisions and choices getting me closer to there or leading me further away?"
Yeah.
Those are skills that have to be taught, you know?
Mm,
For example, we talk a lot about things like filters and boundaries and blockers and things like that. And in the free resources that I have online through the Rebooted Teen Parent Program, we talk about those things and how important they are. But at the end of the day, whether you're 15 or, 55, really doesn't matter. The best filter you're ever going to have at the end of the day isn't going to be an online filter. It's going to be yourself,
mm.
the original filter, you know?
That does make sense, and, doing more research about this, and I seen how like you talked about porn, and I noticed a lot of parents, when they do discover their children are watching porn, right? What is one thing that they come to you that, I guess, the worst first move or even the best first move that you've seen parents do when, I guess, they have to communicate, "Hey, I noticed you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing."
Mm. Well, one of the wrong moves that I make is sort of initiating conversations kind of like that. This is something that you're not supposed to be doing. Now,
Gotcha.
for somebody as young as, say, like 10 or 11, which statistically is when, nowadays somebody would stumble onto something like porn if, unintentionally, but, it's kind of average for someone around that age to be exposed to that. They don't know that. It's just like it popped up, they were curious, innocent intentions, right? Now, a big portion that I really, really zone in on when it comes to what it takes and some practical first steps to initiate conversations that could otherwise be understandably awkward or uncomfortable, because, when it comes to something as visceral as something like sex or, something as stigmatized as pornography, I don't really know how to talk about this. It's weird. Where do I start? So it's real, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
big portion of what's talked about in these programs is instilling a culture of curiosity. Because as far as that self-awareness goes, again, this is a skill set that needs to be taught because up until that point, we're kind of following mom, dad, guardian's lead, Because for example, kind of going back to the filter stuff, it's like you can have all the boundaries in the world or all the filters set on all of their devices. But for example, when a child goes off to college and then they're sort of free range without those filter devices, do they have the inner wherewithal and do they have the coping skills necessary to be able to make value based decisions? Like, do they have that sense of self awareness? Like, okay, I know what's working for me and I know what doesn't work for me. So let me make my decisions based on that. Again, monkey see, monkey do. This is why, especially in this stage of your child's development, it's so important to have these conversations earlier as opposed to
yeah,
later. We can't just kind of leave it up to like, they'll find out about porn or sex, eventually. But why not have them hear about it from their original teachers,
yeah.
you, their parent or guardian, So, as far as how to get started, I mean, really, it's all about, again, instilling that sense of curiosity. Like,
Mm,
what do I want? Like, what am I actually passionate about? And is decisions XYZ leading me closer to there or further away? Again, it's not just about the compulsive behavior, it's about what perhaps might be leading us there.
mm.
Inner thing. It's not the thing, but the place from which it's coming from. So that's a big heart behind, what I do and why I do it.
Okay. So what are the like early warning signs for parents who, like you said, 10 and 11 years old, your kids are being curious, they stumble upon stuff. Like, what are warning signs that your kids are dabbling or into things, not saying it's bad, it's, they're young, they're curious, but are there any telltale signs?
some of the common signs that your child may have stumbled onto pornography or, might be exhibiting some changes in their development, like which is human and natural, but watch out for things like their language, right? When it comes to, perhaps the way they joke, perhaps the way that they talk about themselves. Like, are they perhaps more self deprecating or perhaps a little bit more donic or perhaps more is there just like a vibe change? Just like this is more than an opportunity to check in, see how they're doing emotionally. But another telltale sign is something just like a sense of secrecy, or
Yeah.
a sense of shutting down or maybe shying away from certain topics or conversations. Doesn't necessarily have to be sexual in nature or porn or anything like that. Is there a sense of cynicism perhaps when it comes to conversations about relationships or about marriage or about people's bodies and things like that? It's nothing to ultimately sound the alarm about, but perhaps it's something to just kinda, "Okay, let me just put a pin on that," you know? It doesn't automatically mean that, all the red flags are afoot. It's just a matter of there's been a change, So put a pin in it and again, instill a culture of curiosity. If you're gonna hit him with that sense of shame, like, "This isn't how I raised you," like, "How
Yeah.
dare you watch so and so filth," It's not because any type of addictive behavior does not react well to shame. It just doesn't. If anything, the lesson that's taught is this type of behavior is bad. So mom, dad, guardian is telling me that this is bad, therefore I must be bad.
Bad. Yeah. Yeah.
So let me keep this a secret. Let me stash this away or throw it in the closet and it'll kind of be my own thing. And any compulsive behavior thrives and grows in a sense of secrecy, you know? So for me, it really kind of comes down to that, again, instilling that culture of curiosity. But I honestly think like this whole reason why I wanted to cultivate this rebooted teen parent program at all is to really, really speak to the parents that again are in that understandably uncomfortable situation. Like I noticed some interesting things in the computer search history or, I just don't know how to talk about these things. It's a thing that I want to either protect my child from or make my child aware of because it's a thing that it exists. And the more we pretend it doesn't, the harder it will be eventually to talk about. So that's really who that program is for. Like, if anybody who listens to this is, "Oh my gosh, I know exactly what that's like," then I encourage you to check it out, It's a series of free modules and resources to help get the ball rolling, and if you think that something like the Rebooted Teen program is right for your child, then we can certainly work, but it really starts with you, your original influencer, their original teacher. Like, I'm never gonna tell a parent how to be a parent to their child. That's not
Mm.
my role, you know? I just want to give you the tips, the tools, and techniques backed by research, backed by science, just to give you the tools you need to build the kind of life that you want in your home, to protect your child as much as you can. Not just their well-being when it comes to the relationship to the internet, but really when it comes to their relationship with themselves. Because, internet or not, wherever you go, there you are. So oftentimes, like our self-esteem will oftentimes dictate our decision making. So it's really making sure that we have the wherewithal and the tools necessary if slash when we fall into hard times, like that muscle memory is already set to choose again, community over isolation. So I'm completely going off here, but
No,
it's
no,
something that matters a whole ton to me.
no, 100%. One thing you do, you talk a lot about community, even in the courses that you provide for parents, right? It's all about community and it's all about that support. But what do you say about to parents who feel powerless, that they're looking for answers week to week and they don't feel like they have it in them to discuss this? at all.
If you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you're a parent or a guardian that might be feeling that way, the first thing I wanna say is that, first of all, you are so, so, so not alone. It's so common to feel that way, to feel the sense of inadequacy, to feel the sense of, "Oh, I'm kinda behind the 8 ball," like, technology is booming, and I don't know how to explain the types of changes that are happening in culture and particularly, if you happen to have a history of compulsive behaviors yourself, whether they be, having to do with sex or having to do with porn, it's like, there might be a sense of like, oh, I'm a hypocrite if I try to like, tell my child, hey, don't do this. Sort of like that's when we fall into the trap of like, do as I say, not as I do.
I do, yep.
You know what I'm saying? And by the way, I know we know this logically, but, just to kind of put it out there, children are intuitive. Like they will sniff that stuff out.
You ain't lying.
Bro, man, being a teacher taught me that, man. Like, obviously, when it comes to that sense of transparency and just keeping it real, if you're putting on that, like, teacher voice, like, man, they will shut down. It's like, "Come on, we ain't buying that."
Me and the wife, we have a 2-year-old at home. She's about to be 3 in March.
Yeah.
And my wife be trying to hide, cause I buy her chips, especially like the, chips in Korea are different because they have different flavors and stuff, and I ship
Oh,
them
yeah.
back home. And so
Yeah.
she tells our daughter, "No, she can't have any chips," but my wife be trying to go and sneak them. And so our daughter figured it out. Our daughter, usually when our daughter enters a room, she's loud, she's happy, just, but when she knows mommy's going to sneak some chips, she'll get quiet. And then one time she said she was like round the corner and just like looking and she saw mommy sneaking chips, doing what she wasn't supposed to do. So it's just funny how you say that. Like kids will naturally sniff out, like and observe when parents are doing something they're not necessarily used to doing or supposed to be doing. So,
Yeah, no, it's so real, man. I mean, the cliche that children are sponges exists for a reason. I mean,
hmm
put yourself, if you can, as best you can, in, your child. You said there were 3, right?
about to be 3 yes.
About to be 3. Okay, so they are taking in the world and experiencing planet Earth and life for the first time. So what you and I might take for granted, like a bag of chips, and just like, oh man, like, let's keep this a secret. They're, like, taking it all in, it's just like,
Yep.
"What's going on?"
Yep.
They're watching. So but if anything, this is an opportunity, and in the Rebooted Teen program, or the Rebooted Teen Parent program in particular, we talk about, again, having these types of conversations sooner as opposed to later, and as a parent or guardian or like a figure of influence in, a child's life, stripping the shame from your own self so that you can lead these types of conversations without a sense of, feeling like you're tiptoeing around mines or something like that. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to influence in the wrong way while your ambition to do so is noble. We really talk a big game about letting go of the illusion of perfection. It's a farce. It's not real. And through an attitude of love, of compassion, of intentionality, we give you again, like the tools that perhaps may be necessary to at least give you some leverage and help you out and kind of build your own confidence so that, again, if the game is monkey see, monkey do,
Dude, yep.
when it comes to something like transparency and meaning what you say and saying what you mean, these are skills that they need to be taught and demonstrated through the way that we're raised. I mean, we know how much conditioning plays a role in our
Again.
health and the way that we see the world. And being a parent is arguably, if not arguably, the most important job in the world, you know? So again, it's not my role as a coach to tell you what's important to you or how to be a parent. I just want to make sure that you know that, again, you're not alone. You have someone who cares and someone who has been there when it comes to my own life, when it comes to my own history of compulsive behaviors. I've been through the thick of it, man. I mean, when it comes to this particular world of sexually compulsive behavior, something that is very, very prevalent and relevant,
100%.
not just in my generation, our generation, but because
everywhere.
we're talking about an age of artificial intelligence, of quote unquote fake news, of social media, not just
My
being like
goodness.
a thing that you can do, but it's almost like the cultural norm. It's like I'm so embedded in the zeitgeist that you're almost weird if you don't have an Instagram or TikTok, you know?
And it's crazy. How do you think that environment reshaped the teenage brain and their ability to self-regulate themselves and also identify what's fake news for worse versus what's conjecture to what's a red herring to what's actually consumable, I guess.
That skill of distinguishing what's true and what isn't, what's right and wrong, must be taught early. But as far as the ability to distinguish what's right and wrong, I mean, if we're being completely honest, this is like a time unlike our other. No other route. It doesn't matter. Again, if you're 15 or, 150. I don't know if you noticed, like within the last year, AI was just like sort of this funny idea. But within the last year, just with the growth of technology, it's getting harder. Even for like, trained eyes like yours and mine, it's getting harder to tell like what's real and what isn't. So we're talking about a generation that is cooked if they don't have the proper coping skills necessary to be able to regulate themselves. Because even if they come across something that, might be false in nature, whether it's giving off the illusion of intimacy or whether it is providing a sense of stimulation that might be enticing but isn't in fact truthful, it all comes back down to a sense of who am I? What do I want? And what's going to get me there? You know? And these are conversations that are so, so important to have earlier as opposed to later. Just to bring it down, I know I perhaps sound like a broken record, but when it
No,
comes
you
to
don't.
the rebooted teen program and the
Mhm.
teen parent program, it ultimately comes down to, again, what's going on internally to the point where it's affecting me externally. Because when it comes to behavioral awareness, it doesn't come out of nowhere. Your behaviors are trying to tell you something. It's like you ever have that weird moment where you walk into the kitchen and then by the time you get to the fridge, you like forgot what you were looking for?
All the time.
Well, when your body kinda goes on autopilot, right? But
Mhm.
the same can be said for, behaviors that for some have become compulsive in nature and addictive in nature. There is sort of no real thought pattern involved. We're just kind of following muscle memory. It's just something we do, you know? But the goal, the mission, the heart behind these programs is to reinstill, to reboot one's mind so that they again, can choose conscious awareness instead of muscle memory that's led them down paths that, if they were to think about it, they would know have proven to be unhealthy for them. You know, awareness is such a skill, compassion is such a gift that you can give, not just to others, but to yourself. I talk to clients all the time. Yeah, go ahead.
And you talk about curiosity, you talking about the compassion, and it seems like this is something that you think they should know. So I will ask you, just I don't want to answer for you, but is this a hard truth you wish that every parent would accept? When we're talking about the phones, we're talking about privacy, we're talking about access without turning into a control tyrant. Because at the end of the day, most parents are trying to feed their kids work 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 jobs, right? And they're not making as much money as they used to, especially with the advancement of AI and different things where the jobs were looking like it's going to get cut, right? And now they got to go and parent their children. So how do they look? How would they accept, or what truths should they accept about parenting, especially with this new generation?
Well, with this particular generation, and when I say this generation, I mean, the students that are in school right now in high school and middle school, around there, right? And I get it, when it comes to my experience as a teacher, you don't think I've ever said to a student like, "Yo, put your dang phone down." I get it. I've been there. But if I learned anything through teaching through the pandemic, we're talking about a generation that, again, we could talk about They don't know what life was like before social media, but what was subconsciously taught during, what was subconsciously taught during the pandemic? You have a screen. This is where school is. This is where my friends are. Oh, this is where my entertainment is. Oh, this is where my information is. Oh, this is pretty much where everything I would ever want is instantly found. So, again, when we're talking about, taking your eyes away from the screen, it's not that they necessarily don't understand. It's just like it doesn't compute. You know,
Mm.
that's why I'm saying, like, the very definition of communication has, in fact, changed. There is a new way of seeing the world. There's a new way of interacting with everybody. So that's truly why I say, when we say, "Oh, when I was your age," that phrase does not apply as much as you perhaps think it does. So starting there.
So, if you don't mind, walk me through the Reboot Teen parent course at that high level. What are the four modules you're trying to change inside a family?
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I mean, I've said it a bunch of times in this one conversation, but when it comes to whoops, hang on a second here. Technology is not on my side. I apologize. Can you still see me? Where are we here? There we go. Sorry about that. But no, I mean, when it comes to, you know, the rebooted teen parent program, again, we talk about different techniques, different tools, and different concepts that really any parent of a teenager can use when it comes to initiating types of conversations, kind of like the do's and the don'ts, kind of like some practical, very actionable places to start. So, for example, like we mentioned before, we talk about some red flags when it comes to usage of their phones or iPads or laptops. Like it's just some things that are going on that you might not be aware of, certain apps to watch out for, or at least kind of like some basic things to keep your finger on the pulse of. It's kind of like, that's for kids. Like, I don't really understand that stuff. I mean, when it comes, for example, an app like Snapchat. You know, like, I mean, it had a particular purpose, but in many ways, what it's become is sort of like, I mean, why do you think, like a company would create an app where like, like video messages or picture messages would like disappear like as soon as they're sent? Like it's unfortunately like there have been, like insidious uses, behind that function, and people have gotten in trouble because of that, and it's just bringing about a sense of awareness, not about giving you reasons to freak out, but giving you the knowledge necessary so that when you make decisions for your child as a parent, they're coming from an information-based place as opposed to a place of paranoia, as opposed to a place of anxiety, and with your child's well-being in mind. So the modules that we go through kind of like gives you like a crash course of like, hey, here we are in 2026. Here's what's up. Here's what's going on, and these are things to be aware of that your children currently are being exposed to. It's not the, glory days of the internet in the late 90s, early thousands where there maybe was like one or two chat rooms and, a blog or two, everybody has access to the entire planet all
Yeah.
at once. So it's like, here's some things to watch out for. Ultimately, what you can do about it and what you can do through it. Because what matters most at the end of the day is your relationship with your child and your child knowing that if they have a question, you can be that sense of safety. You can be that sense of human interaction, which is messy and not perfect in nature. As opposed to going to something like ChatGPT, where it's like, it might be quote unquote perfect in nature, but it loses that sense of relationship and quality and that sense of true intimacy and relationship. But particularly with something around, excess exposure to the internet and particularly with something like porn, there is this illusion of intimacy that when we're young,
Mm,
don't know the
makes sense.
difference yet between something like sex and intimacy, where it's like, we know in our older age where it's like the 2 can be interrelated, but they're
Yeah.
not mutually exclusive, right? They're
Yes.
not synonyms, you know? So, whether you call it the birds or the bees or whether you call it the talk or whatever, we
Yeah.
talk about that in the Rebooted Teen program. And once again, it's not my role to tell you, I'm not going to give you a script, but I am going to give you
Mm.
some bullet points. I am going to
Some
give you
things like
encouragements, and I am going to remind you that it's not you versus your child. It's you, your child
yeah.
versus the problem, right?
Yes. Yes.
You are on the same team. You're the captain of the team, but you're playing this game together. So
Yes.
that's the ultimate thing that we talk about in the parent program.
So with that, you being a teacher, a public speaker, a worship leader, how does your faith and that identity fit into the recovery without making people feel judged or preached at?
Well, I know what it's like. I mean, as a Christian myself, I mean, I know what it's like to feel like, again, when it comes to something like my own sexual nature, I'm a human being. It's how I'm wired. That's basic cable. Like that comes with the territory, you know? And the more we sort of shine like this kind of, devilish red light over it, that's where shame is going to sit.
Hmm.
One thing that we need to preach, teach, and express is that, having a sexual nature about you, that's to be expected and that's normal and that's healthy. That's normal. Pornography is not.
Mm,
They're two separate entities,
yeah.
right? So we can talk about things like discipline. We could talk about things like, your body is a temple. We can talk about things like, time and place. But the fact that you're feeling urges, the fact that you're feeling, certain things at a certain stage of development is to be expected. It's an opportunity to have a conversation like, wow, like
Yeah.
this is a sign that you're growing. So, it's sort of like, a parent's role or like a figure of influence's role is sort of to let them know what to expect. It's like, I've seen this movie before. I know where the jump scares are. You know what I mean? It's like, this
Hmm.
is what to anticipate. This is what's going to happen.
Yep.
And this is how you cope with it in an effective way so that, you know, you can feel what you feel, but it's not running you. It's not ultimately taking the wheel and driving the car of your decision making. It's to, again, through instilling that culture of curiosity, it's just like, oh, I'm feeling XYZ. So it's like, okay, well, here are some tools, here are some coping strategies so that you can feel what you feel. It's your nervous system trying to tell you something. The more we sort of shame or suppress or make every effort possible to cut off a certain feeling that we have, we're cutting off an opportunity to get to know ourselves. I mean, for example, a big tool that I love to utilize and teach is called dialoguing. So basically,
Mm,
to give an example, like how it works is like this. It's a journaling exercise that really anybody at any age can do. I love it. It's really, really impacted my own life. And it basically works like this. So you have a scripted out conversation between yourself and as what Dr. George Collins would call the author of a book called Breaking the Cycle. Awesome book. He calls it a sub personality. So it's just a part of your personality. So you can have a conversation with maybe an anxious side of you, or maybe like a part of you that is like experiencing a sexual urge. It could virtually be anything. But let's just use urge for an example. So you are over here, and the feeling or sensation, the thought pattern is over here. So it's like
yeah.
you write something from your perspective, and then you try to literally write and speak from that particular feeling's point of view. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but like you're listening to it to get to understand it from a place of compassion as opposed to suppression. So, just in that one example, what do we prove? You're over here and it's over here.
Every day. Yep.
Therefore, you are not it and it is
It's
not you.
not you.
It's a
I got you.
separation process, not out of like, get out of here.
Here,
It's
yeah.
it's a part of me. If I get a cut on my finger, I'm not like, "What's wrong with you?" It's just a part that it's a part that just needs healing right now.
Yeah.
It's a part that needs to be paid attention to. So with all that said, as far as, like, how it's played a role in my faith or how it's affected me, man, oh man, if anything, like, it's made me more spiritually open, like, as
Mm,
opposed to the motor of my car being something that's driven by shame or suppression or, I can't talk about this, a sense of feeling unsafe. Is
mhm,
this safe to bring to you? Can I talk about this without being made fun of? Or, "Oh, we don't talk about that here," you know? If anything, it's made me more open. It's like,
mm.
wow, look at what I don't have to worry so much anymore because I found a community that cares. Because I found people that, like, hey, you can ask these types of questions. And again, it's not you versus me. It's not you versus the other person. It's us together versus the angst. It's us together versus the problem. It's us together versus like that thing, that feeling, again, that internal world that's affecting one's experience in the external world. That is the target, not the behavior itself. That's what addiction is. I said it before and I'll say it again. It's not the thing, it's the place from which it's coming from. So when it comes to initiating conversations, one thing that I'll majorly say is choose your target wisely. It's not the other person, it is that thing, which
That's what
why
trying.
so, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
big part of what we talk about.
And we talked about a lot about parents, right? But in the last question, I want to ask you when a teen stumbles upon this, because I do have some teen listeners that do reach out time to time as we talk about certain things. If they're listening right now and they have a secret
Mm.
and they're feeling ashamed, they're feeling stuck, they're feeling scared, as we're talking about things of this nature, right? What would you say to them that doesn't make them feel corny, but it's true?
Listen, man, I mean, it might sound corny, but it's true. The first thing that comes to mind, and I said it to, your mom, your dad, whoever's at home, but I'll say it to you as well. You're not alone. I've been there, which is why this is so important to me. I know what it's like to be in that kind of place where, like I described, and I have this thing that I'm struggling with, or I have this thing that I don't know how to talk about. I don't quite have the words for it. And I feel like if I do talk about it, I'll be judged. I'll be kind of tossed aside or won't be taken seriously?
Mhm.
And having been there myself, like, I get you. Like, I really, really feel where you're coming from. Not like this casual, like, yeah, I feel you, bro. Like, I've been in your shoes? And while, our shoes might be different styles nowadays, like, I've been in your place. And a lot of what we talk about in the rebooted teen programs is just like, yo, what's going on? Just in the sense of not relishing in the problems, really not trying to put our problem on a pedestal, but trying to shine a spotlight on the solution. But the
Yeah.
best part about it is that you don't gotta do it all by yourself. You don't gotta figure it out all on your own. That's what the value of community is all about finding other people. Wow, you struggle with something similar that I do. Hey, you have been through ABC too? Like, suddenly I don't feel so weird.
You're right. You're right. You're 100% right. I like that. So is there anything that else you wanna say, promote, share with the people, so they can go and follow?
Yeah, again, to my younger listeners, the Rebooted Teen program is for those who might be yearning and seeking that sense of community and just that sense of like, hey, like other people not only know what it's like to be in my shoes, perhaps if you're listening and you are curious when it comes to not just information, but like transformation. Like, I
Yes.
really like what's going on in my life. I
Mhm.
don't really know how to go about it, and specifically, if you find some sort of behavior that's proven to be unhealthy for you when it comes to the internet, particularly around something like pornography, again, like, it's only awkward if we keep it awkward, It
Mhm.
don't need to lead that type of walk with a sense of shame. It's like, it doesn't have to be weird, and we're just keeping it real, We have
Yeah.
a good time. We're just, like, having real talks. Like, just if you're looking for a community like that, if you're looking for an opportunity to say what you really wanna say in a
Mhm.
community that has your best interest at heart, hit me up. You can follow at Rebooted Teen on Instagram. Feel free to check it out just to kinda get an idea of what we talk about, and I hope to see you there. But for any parents or guardians that might be listening as well, there's a lot of free resources for you guys on rebootedteen.com. Also, feel free to check out at Rebooted Teen on Instagram, just for, again, some first few steps, just to kind of initiate those types of conversations. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How can I help? It's not a matter of just like, all right, here's my backbone. Here you
Yeah.
go. Do whatever you want. It's like, again, you are still the captain of the team, but remember, choose your target wisely. The enemy the enemy is not your child, you know? And your child will feel as if you're coming at them. The enemy is the behavior that's proven to be unhealthy for them. It's coming out of a place of love for your child, like, suffer. I don't want you to kinda, like, walk around like you're alone. Like, I am your biggest fan, you
Yeah.
know? And if you feel that way, but you perhaps don't know how to, initiate some of these conversations, or if you feel like you need some help, there are some free resources for you. Again, you can find them on rebootedteen.com. My name is Chris Rogers, and it's my mission to help you as much as I can. Again, you are
Mhm.
the captain of your team, but every team needs a coach, and that's my
Yep.
role.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, appreciate you, Chris. Man, you are amazing. I love what you're doing. Please, please, parents, support him. Teens, please take a look at it. I know it's easier to stroll on Instagram and Facebook, but getting information like this helps your development as you become young adults. This is very pivotal. It's a pivotal age. So please take your time, be informed correctly, and understand that Chris does have a heart for you guys. So he's not misleading in any information he's given, statistics, facts, everything else like that as proven concepts. This is amazing. And this has been Unfiltered Conversations. Thank you for your time, guys.